In the West, we are living in a time when many local churches are dying. We ask, where have all the people gone? Where did they go? Perhaps these are the wrong questions. Maybe there is a better way to think about faith, God, and community. Our common understanding of church is a biblical model. It just isn't the only model in the Bible. More importantly, our most common way of thinking about church misses the movement of Jesus to and through the world. The model that we have embraced and largely ordered our churches around has its roots in the earliest stories of the Bible. The Promised Land was ordered from outside in. Within the Holy Land there was a holy city, Jerusalem. Within the holy city there was a holy mountain, Zion. Near the holy mount, Solomon built a temple complex, going in each court more holy than the last. Ultimately, there was a holy room. This room was called the Holy of Holies, and individuals had no personal access to the room. And still, there was something more holy within. There in the Holy of Holies sat the Ark of the Covenant. And above the Ark, between the angel's wings, which were covered in gold, the very presence of God, the mercy seat. To this day, though the Holy of Holies no longer exists, Jews long to be near this place as the unique and holy locale of God's gracious and merciful presence within the world. All of this comes from our beloved and our ancient scriptures. It is biblical and has a place of honor within our hearts and actions. The problem is that God's story does not end here. With an outside-in movement of God's people, with a progress that builds in holiness as we get closer to the mercy seat of God. If the Hebrew scriptures highlight an outside-in human movement towards the temple, the Greek scriptures highlight the exact opposite. If there is an outside-in movement, there is also a profound and shaking inside-out movement of God's Spirit, God's faithfulness, and God's people. The fact that the stories of Jesus are written in the language of the larger ancient world is instructive. If God's movement was only towards a holy city, all of the scriptures would be written in one holy language for the world to learn. The life of Jesus is the very pivot point away from an outside-in temple-focused thinking towards an inside-out kingdom way of living. As Jesus blesses his disciples in a final word of encouragement and instruction, he sends us on a kingdom movement from inside our communities to the larger world. Jesus says, I am sending you as witnesses to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. We are certainly witnesses within our churches, but we are also sent as witnesses to those around us, then to our enemies, and to the farthest limits of the sea. In what we call the Great Commission, Jesus refocuses the movement of God's story from outside in to inside out, from a temple-centered world to a grace-expanding kingdom. It should not surprise us that making this shift is a difficult experience for us. Jesus himself struggled to convert his way of thinking. Both Matthew and Luke record Jesus' refusal to care for a Canaanite woman who was in need, a woman from the outside. Jesus said, "It is not right to take bread out of children's mouths and throw it to the dogs." She was quick. "You are right, Master, but beggar dogs do get scraps from the Master's table." Jesus gave in. "Oh, woman, your faith is something else. What you want is what you get." Right then, her daughter became well. From this story, we get a hint that Jesus undergoes a conversion from a temple-centered world to a grace and healing, expanding kingdom. Like Jesus, Peter has a conversion story from an outside-in world to an inside-out reality where God's Spirit and blessing is not only for those who draw close, but for those outside of the covenant community. In the book of Acts, we are told that Peter was shaken by a dream. This dream enabled Peter to care for Cornelius, a Roman centurion, and his household. As Peter was converted to an inside-out movement of faith, Peter was able to witness God's Spirit being poured out on an entire community that was not Jewish. If Jesus was moved by the Canaanite woman, and if Peter in his love grew to extend to Romans, we too need to be converted to an inside-out faith, a faith that sends, goes, and embraces those who are outside. We know how to gather and slowly progress to the center of worship, but the kingdom of Jesus is quite different. Moving from the inside out takes trust, faith, love, and hope. Living in community with those who are outside of our bounds is the setting of God's good news in the context of discipleship. The jail cells full of captives are beyond the walls of our holy temples. The broken sin of the world extends far beyond the reach of pulpit and pew. The blind wander outside of our sanctuaries, and the hungry seek food along the highways and the byways of this world. Churches are dying because we have no idea how to live as people with an inside-out faith. We prefer people coming to us on our terms and in line with our comfort levels. When we consciously choose to live as outside-in people with temple thinking, we are really admitting that we do not know Jesus. As Jesus said in the parable of the sheep and the goats, "Be gone from me, for I never knew you." In our time, this is the central issue of reformation, of reformation. And our being refounded in God's gracious love depends on whether we choose to be outside in or inside out people, whether we seek holiness first or whether we find holiness as we care for the broken world. May God multiply the ministry of Christ among us more than we can possibly imagine. Amen.